A single father with grease under his nails. A CEO trapped in a gilded cage. One desperate offer that will shatter both their worlds. When Olivia Grant walks into Ethan Cole's garage with a briefcase full of cash and an impossible request, neither of them knows that this fake relationship will cost them everything they thought they wanted and give them everything they never knew they needed. This is a story about breaking free, choosing love over legacy, and discovering that the greatest risk is finally being honest about who you are. If you're ready to witness a love that defies every rule, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city name so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The wrench slipped from Ethan Cole's hand and clattered against the concrete floor of the garage. He cursed under his breath, wiping the sweat from his forehead with the back of his arm, leaving a smear of motor oil across his skin. The smell of gasoline and rust hung thick in the air, mixing with the afternoon heat that made the small shop feel like an oven. He'd been under the hood of a '98 Honda for the better part of 3 hours, and his back was screaming at him to stand up straight. "Dad! Dad! Look what I made!" Ethan straightened, his spine cracking in protest, and turned to see his daughter bounding toward him from the small office in the corner of the shop. Maya was 7 years old, all knees and elbows and wild brown curls that refused to stay in the ponytail he'd attempted that morning. She held up a drawing, another one of her crayon masterpieces, this one featuring what appeared to be a dinosaur eating an ice cream cone. "That's amazing, sweetheart," Ethan said, crouching down to her level despite the protest from his knees. He took the paper carefully, studying it with the seriousness it deserved. "Is that a T-Rex?" "It's a velociraptor," Maya corrected him, her tone suggesting he should have known better. "They're smarter, and this one likes strawberry ice cream." "Obviously," Ethan replied, fighting back a smile. "How could I have missed that?" Maya beamed at him, gap-toothed and brilliant, and for a moment everything else fell away. The stack of unpaid bills on his desk, the notice from Maya's school about the field trip he couldn't afford, the fact that Mrs. Chen next door was only watching Maya after school out of the kindness of her heart, and that kindness had limits. None of it mattered when his daughter looked at him like he hung the moon. "Can we get ice cream after you're done?" Maya asked, her eyes wide and hopeful. Ethan's chest tightened. He'd checked his bank account that morning, $17.63 until Friday. "Maybe this weekend, okay? I've got to finish this car first." Maya's face fell, just slightly, before she rallied with the resilience that broke his heart and put it back together in the same breath. "Okay. Can I color in the office?" "Stay where I can see you," Ethan said, ruffling her hair. She scampered back toward the office, already pulling out another piece of paper. Ethan returned to the Honda, but his mind wasn't on the timing belt anymore. It was on the fact that maybe this weekend meant probably not, and that Maya deserved better than a father who couldn't even spring for a $2 ice cream cone without doing mental math first. She deserved better than a drafty apartment above a garage, better than wearing hand-me-downs from Mrs. Chen's granddaughter, better than everything he was barely managing to provide. He'd been 25 when Maya's mother left. Charlotte had lasted exactly 3 months after Maya was born before deciding that motherhood and small-town life weren't for her. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter and disappeared into whatever life she'd convinced herself was waiting for her in California. Ethan had never heard from her again. Some nights, when Maya asked about her mom, he didn't know what hurt more, the fact that Charlotte had left, or the fact that Maya had stopped asking as often. The sound of tires on gravel pulled Ethan from his thoughts. He glanced toward the open bay door and froze. The car rolling into his garage wasn't just expensive, it was obscene. A sleek black Mercedes-Benz S-Class, the kind that cost more than he'd make in 5 years, maybe 10. The paint gleamed like it had been polished that morning. The windows were tinted so dark he couldn't see inside. For a wild second, Ethan wondered if he'd forgotten about an appointment, but he knew every car on his schedule, and this sure as hell wasn't one of them. The engine purred to a stop, the driver's side door opened, and then she stepped out. Ethan had seen beautiful women before. He'd even dated a few, back before Maya, back when his life had room for things like dates and possibilities. But this woman didn't just walk into his garage. She commanded it. She was tall, maybe 5'8", wearing a charcoal gray pantsuit that probably cost more than his rent. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and her heels clicked against the concrete with the kind of precision that suggested she didn't take a single step without intention. Everything about her screamed money and control, from the designer bag slung over her shoulder to the way she surveyed the garage like she was evaluating a potential acquisition. Her eyes landed on Ethan. They were sharp, assessing, the kind of eyes that missed nothing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Are you Ethan Cole?" she asked. Her voice was smooth, composed, with just enough edge to suggest she wasn't used to waiting for answers. "That's me," Ethan said, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen cleaner days. "What can I do for you?" She took a few steps closer, her heels echoing in the quiet garage. Up close, Ethan could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the tightness in her jaw that suggested she carried more stress than her polished exterior let on. She couldn't have been much older than him, 30, maybe 32. "My name is Olivia Grant," she said, extending a hand. Her handshake was firm, businesslike. "I have a proposition for you." Ethan blinked. "A proposition?" "Yes?" She glanced around the garage, taking in the oil-stained floors, the battered toolboxes, the ancient coffee maker on the desk that had been making the same burnt sludge since Ethan's father ran this place. Her expression didn't change, but Ethan could feel her judgment like a weight. "Is there somewhere private we can talk?" "This is about as private as it gets," Ethan said, crossing his arms. "What's this about? If it's about your car, I can take a look, but I don't usually work on cars like that. You'd be better off at a dealership." "It's not about my car." Olivia's gaze flicked toward the office, where Maya was humming to herself, completely absorbed in her coloring. "Actually, it's about you." Ethan's instincts prickled. He'd seen enough crime procedurals to know that when a stranger in an expensive car showed up talking about propositions, it rarely ended well. "Look, lady, I don't know what you're selling, but I'm not interested." "I'm not selling anything," Olivia said. Her tone sharpened, just slightly, like she was used to people listening the first time she spoke. "I'm offering you $50,000. Ethan's brain stuttered. "What? $50,000? Olivia repeated, slower this time, like she thought he might not have heard her. "In exchange for a weekend of your time." The garage suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Ethan's heart was pounding, though he couldn't say why. $50,000. That was enough to pay off every bill sitting on his desk, enough to fix the leak in the apartment roof, enough to take Maya on a real vacation, the kind where they didn't have to worry about the cost of gas or whether the motel had a free breakfast. It was also too good to be true. "What's the catch?" Ethan asked, his voice flat. Olivia's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had reached her eyes. "The catch is that you have to pretend to be my boyfriend for 2 days. Ethan stared at her. "You're joking." "I don't joke about business," Olivia said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek leather folder, flipping it open to reveal a contract. 2 days, this weekend. You'll accompany me to a family event, act as though we're in a relationship, and at the end of it, you'll receive $50,000. Cash or wire transfer, whichever you prefer." "Why?" Ethan asked, his mind racing. "Why me? And why the hell would you pay someone 50 grand to pretend to be your boyfriend?" Olivia's expression tightened just for a second before she smoothed it back into that same unreadable mask. "Because my family is trying to force me into an engagement with a man I don't love. And because you're exactly the kind of person they would never expect me to be with." The words landed like a slap. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "So I'm what? Your middle finger to your family?" "You're my solution," Olivia corrected. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. "And I'm offering you more money than you'll see in a year, possibly 2. So unless you have a better offer waiting in the wings, I suggest you hear me out." Ethan wanted to tell her to get out, wanted to tell her that he didn't need her money, that he wasn't some prop she could rent for a weekend. But then his eyes drifted toward the office, toward Maya, who was holding up another drawing for him to see, completely unaware that her father was standing 10 feet away from a woman offering him a lifeline he didn't deserve and couldn't afford to refuse. 2 days, Ethan said quietly. 2 days, Olivia confirmed. "You'll stay at my family's estate, attend a formal engagement party, play the part convincingly, and then you walk away $50,000 richer. And if I say no?" Olivia tilted her head, studying him like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. Then I'll find someone else. But I chose you for a reason, Mr. Cole. You don't strike me as someone who's afraid of a challenge. Ethan laughed, short and bitter. You don't know anything about me. I know you're a single father working 60-hour weeks to keep this place running, Olivia said, her voice even. I know your daughter's school sent home a notice about a field trip you can't afford. I know you've been late on rent twice in the last 3 months, and I know that $50,000 would change your life. The air left Ethan's lungs. How the hell do you know all that? I do my research, Olivia said simply. I don't make offers without understanding who I'm dealing with. It should have made Ethan angrier, should have sent him into a rage that the stranger had dug into his life, cataloged his failures, turned his struggles into leverage. But all he felt was tired. Tired of scraping by. Tired of telling Maya, maybe next time. Tired of feeling like he was failing her every single day. Dad, Maya called from the office. Can I show Miss Pretty Lady my dinosaur? Olivia's gaze shifted to Maya, and for the briefest moment, something in her expression softened. She's beautiful. She's everything, Ethan said, his voice rough. Olivia looked back at him, and this time there was something almost human in her eyes. Then do this for her. Ethan closed his eyes. $50,000. 2 days. He thought about the bills, the roof, the field trip, the fact that Maya's birthday was in 2 months and he hadn't even started saving for a present. He thought about what it would mean to say yes to this ridiculous, impossible offer. And then he thought about what it would mean to say no. When do we leave? Ethan asked. Olivia's shoulders relaxed just slightly. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. I'll send a car to pick you up. I need to arrange for someone to watch my daughter. Already handled, Olivia said, pulling a business card from her bag and handing it to him. My assistant has arranged for a highly vetted professional nanny to stay with her for the weekend. Full background check, references, the works. She'll arrive tomorrow at 5:30. Ethan stared at the card, feeling like he'd just stepped into someone else's life. You were that sure I'd say yes. I was that sure you'd make the smart choice, Olivia corrected. She tucked the folder back into her bag. I'll need you to sign the contract tonight. My assistant will email it to you within the hour. Read it carefully. If you have questions, call the number on that card. What do I need to bring? Nothing, Olivia said. Everything you need will be provided. Clothes, shoes, accessories. You'll be fitted when we arrive. Fitted? Ethan repeated, feeling like he was speaking a foreign language. My family expects a certain standard, Olivia said, her tone clipped. You'll need to look the part. Right, Ethan said. Because a guy covered in motor oil doesn't exactly scream CEO's boyfriend. Olivia's lips twitched. You're perceptive. I'm realistic, Ethan shot back. Your family's going to see right through this. Let me worry about my family, Olivia said. She turned toward her car, then paused, glancing back at him. One more thing. When we're there, you'll need to be convincing. That means physical affection, holding hands, touching, maybe a kiss or two if the situation calls for it. Can you handle that? Ethan's face heated. I think I can manage. Good. Olivia opened her car door, sliding into the driver's seat with the kind of grace that suggested she'd never had an awkward moment in her life. I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Cole. Ethan, he said, surprising himself. If we're supposed to be dating, you should probably call me Ethan. Olivia's eyes met his through the open window, and for the first time he saw something that might have been amusement. Ethan, then. I'll see you tomorrow. The Mercedes purred to life and glided out of the garage, disappearing down the street like it had never been there at all. Ethan stood in the middle of the garage, staring at the spot where it had been, trying to convince himself that the last 10 minutes had actually happened. Dad! Maya appeared at his elbow, tugging on his sleeve. Who was that lady? She was really pretty, like a princess. Ethan crouched down, pulling Maya into a hug that she tolerated for exactly 3 seconds before squirming free. She's just someone who needed help with something. Are you going to help her? Ethan looked at his daughter, her bright eyes, her hopeful smile, her complete and utter faith that he could fix anything, and he made a choice that terrified him. Yeah, kiddo, he said quietly. I'm going to help her. What's that? That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table and read the contract Olivia's assistant had sent. It was written in the kind of dense legal language that made his head hurt, but the terms were clear enough. 2 days. Full discretion. $50,000 upon completion. There was a clause about confidentiality, another about professional conduct, and a third that basically said if he screwed this up, he'd owe her everything and then some. Ethan signed it anyway. He told himself it was for Maya, told himself that 2 days of playing pretend was worth the financial security it would bring, told himself that people did stranger things for money all the time. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just agreed to something far more complicated than a simple business transaction. Olivia Grant wasn't just hiring him to play a role. She was pulling him into a world he didn't understand, surrounded by people who would see him as exactly what he was, an outsider who didn't belong. And yet, when he closed his eyes, all he could see was the look on Olivia's face when she'd mentioned her family, the tightness around her mouth, the way her hands had clenched just slightly when she talked about the engagement. She wasn't just offering him money, she was buying her freedom. Or at least she was trying to. Ethan had no idea if it would work, but he knew one thing for certain. This weekend was going to change everything. The car arrived at exactly 5:45 a.m. Ethan had been awake since 4, pacing the apartment, checking on Maya every 15 minutes like she might disappear if he looked away. The nanny Olivia had arranged, a woman named Clara with kind eyes and a resume that included stints with senators and ambassadors, had arrived right on schedule, armed with activities and snacks, and the kind of calm competence that made Ethan feel like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a complete disaster. "She'll be fine," Clara said, sensing his hesitation. "I've done this 100 times. She won't even miss you." "She'll miss me," Ethan muttered, but he grabbed his jacket anyway. Maya was still asleep when he kissed her forehead and slipped out the door. The car waiting outside wasn't the Mercedes. It was a black SUV with tinted windows and a driver who didn't say a word as Ethan climbed into the back seat. Olivia was already inside. She looked different in the early morning light. Less polished, maybe, though still impeccably dressed in dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than his couch. Her hair was down, falling in loose waves around her shoulders, and she wasn't wearing the armor of her business suit. She looked almost human. "Morning," Ethan said, buckling his seatbelt. "Good morning," Olivia replied. She was scrolling through her phone, her expression unreadable. "Did you have any trouble with the nanny?" "Clara? No. She seems great. Terrifying, but great." Olivia's lips twitched. "She comes highly recommended." "Yeah, I got that from the part where she mentioned working for a senator." The driver pulled away from the curb, and the city began to slide past the windows. Ethan watched the familiar streets give way to the highway, his stomach twisting into knots. "So," he said, breaking the silence, "what's the plan?" Olivia set her phone down, turning to face him. "The estate is about 2 hours north. We'll arrive in time for brunch with my family. The engagement party is tomorrow evening. Between now and then, you'll need to be fitted for formal wear, meet my parents, and survive the scrutiny of about 30 people who will be looking for any reason to doubt this relationship." "No pressure," Ethan said dryly. "I don't believe in sugarcoating," Olivia said. "My mother, in particular, will be difficult. She's the one pushing this engagement. She sees it as a strategic alliance." "And your father?" "My father does what my mother tells him," Olivia said, her tone flat. "He stopped having opinions about my life when I took over the company 10 years ago." Ethan studied her. "You run a company?" "Grant Industries," Olivia said. "Tech sector. We specialize in AI-driven logistics solutions." Ethan had no idea what that meant, but he nodded anyway. "Sounds impressive." "It is," Olivia said without a hint of arrogance. "Which is why my mother thinks I need a husband who can match that success. Enter Richard Callaway, heir to Callaway Enterprises, Stanford graduate, and the most boring man I've ever met. And you're supposed to marry him." "I'm supposed to merge our companies," Olivia corrected. "The marriage is just the paperwork." Ethan frowned. "That's bleak." "That's business," Olivia said. She looked out the window, her expression distant. "My mother built Grant Industries from nothing. She's convinced that the only way to secure its future is through alliances. Marrying Richard isn't about love, it's about market share." "And you're okay with that?" Olivia's jaw tightened. "I wasn't given a choice." The weight of those words settled between them. Ethan thought about his own life, the choices he'd made, the ones that had been made for him. He thought about Charlotte leaving, about becoming a father at 25, about every decision that had led him to this moment, sitting in the back of an SUV with a woman who had everything except the one thing that mattered. "So what's the end game?" Ethan asked. "I show up, we pretend to be in love, and then what? Your family just backs off?" I don't know," Olivia admitted, and for the first time she sounded uncertain. "But I know I can't marry Richard, and I know this is my only chance to prove that I'm serious about refusing. By bringing home a mechanic. By bringing home someone real," Olivia said, meeting his eyes. "Someone who doesn't care about my company or my money or what I can do for their portfolio. Someone who just sees me." Ethan's chest tightened. "You know I'm doing this for the money, right?" "I know," Olivia said quietly, "but that doesn't mean you can't also be honest." The rest of the drive passed in silence. Ethan watched the landscape change from city to suburbs to sprawling countryside, the houses getting bigger and farther apart until they were surrounded by estates that looked like something out of a movie. When the car finally turned through a set of iron gates and onto a long driveway, Ethan's stomach dropped. The house, if you could even call it that, was massive. 3 stories of stone and glass, surrounded by manicured gardens and fountains that probably cost more to maintain than Ethan made in a year. The driveway curved around a circular courtyard where a valet was already waiting. "Holy shit," Ethan breathed. "Welcome to the Grant estate," Olivia said. There was no warmth in her voice. "Try not to look too impressed. They'll eat you alive." The car stopped, and the driver opened the door. Olivia stepped out first, smoothing her sweater and squaring her shoulders like she was preparing for battle. Ethan followed, his boots crunching on the gravel. The front door opened and a woman appeared. She was in her late 50s, elegant in the way that came from a lifetime of privilege, with perfectly coiffed silver hair and a gaze that could cut glass. She looked Ethan up and down, her expression somewhere between disdain and disbelief. "Olivia," the woman said, her voice cool. "You're late." "Traffic," Olivia replied smoothly. She reached for Ethan's hand, lacing her fingers through his. Her palm was warm, her grip firm. "Mother, this is Ethan Cole." "Ethan, this is my mother, Margaret Grant." Margaret's eyes flicked to their joined hands, then back to Ethan's face. "Mr. Cole," she said, her tone making it clear she'd already decided he was insufficient. "How unexpected." "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Grant," Ethan said, extending his free hand. Margaret didn't take it. "We'll see," she said. Then she turned on her heel and disappeared into the house. Olivia squeezed Ethan's hand. "That went better than expected." "Jesus," Ethan muttered. "Come on," Olivia said, pulling him toward the door. "It only gets worse from here." And as Ethan stepped into the Grant estate, surrounded by wealth and judgment and a world he didn't belong to, he realized she was probably right. The inside of the Grant estate made Ethan feel like he'd walked into a museum. Everything was white marble and dark wood, with artwork on the walls that looked like it belonged behind velvet ropes. A crystal chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling, catching the morning light and scattering it across the foyer in 1,000 glittering fragments. His boots echoed on the floor, each step announcing that he didn't belong here. Olivia kept her hand in his as she led him through a series of hallways that all looked identical. Ethan tried to memorize the route, but gave up after the 3rd turn. If he got lost in this place, they'd probably find his skeleton in 50 years. "The fitting room is this way," Olivia said, her voice low. "We'll get you sorted before brunch, and your mom seems thrilled to meet me," Ethan said. "My mother is thrilled about very little," Olivia replied. "Don't take it personally. Hard not to when she looked at me like I tracked dog shit into her house." Olivia's lips twitched. "You'll get used to it." They turned into a room that was bigger than Ethan's entire apartment. Racks of suits lined one wall, and a man with silver-rimmed glasses and a tape measure around his neck stood waiting. He looked Ethan up and down with the same expression Margaret had worn, though his was tinged with professional interest rather than outright disdain. "This is Pierre," Olivia said. "He's going to make sure you have everything you need." "Everything?" Ethan asked. "Everything," Pierre confirmed in an accent that might have been French or might have been an affectation. "Shoes, suits, accessories. By the time I'm finished, you'll look like you belong here." "Not sure that's possible," Ethan muttered. Pierre smiled thinly. "I've worked miracles with less. Arms out, please." The next 30 minutes were an exercise in humiliation. Pierre measured every inch of Ethan's body, muttering to himself in what was definitely French while making notes on a tablet. He pulled suits from the racks, holding them up to Ethan's frame and shaking his head before moving on to the next. Olivia sat in a chair by the window, scrolling through her phone, apparently unbothered by the fact that Ethan was being treated like a mannequin. "This one," Pierre said finally, pulling out a charcoal gray suit that looked like it cost more than Ethan's truck. "And this shirt, white, classic, no patterns. We'll add a tie later. Shoes." He disappeared into a closet and emerged with a pair of black leather dress shoes that gleamed like they'd been spit-shined. "Size 11, yes?" "Yeah," Ethan said, startled. "How'd you know?" "I know," Pierre said simply. He handed the suit to Ethan and pointed toward a changing screen in the corner. "Go. Let's see if I'm as good as I think I am." Ethan changed behind the screen, feeling ridiculous. The suit fit like it had been made for him, which was impossible since Pierre had just pulled it off a rack. The fabric was soft, expensive, nothing like the stiff polyester suit he'd worn to his father's funeral 5 years ago. When he stepped out, Pierre circled him like a shark, tugging at the shoulders and smoothing the lapels. "Perfect," Pierre declared. "You clean up well, Mr. Cole." Olivia looked up from her phone, and something in her expression shifted. It was subtle, barely there, but Ethan caught it. Surprise, maybe. Or approval. She stood, crossing the room to stand in front of him. "He's right," she said quietly. "You look good." Ethan felt his face heat. "I look like I'm playing dress-up." "You look like you belong here," Olivia corrected. She reached up, adjusting his collar with a familiarity that felt practiced. "That's all that matters." Her fingers brushed against his neck, and Ethan went very still. She was close enough that he could smell her perfume, something clean and expensive, like citrus and cedar. Her eyes were focused on the collar, but he could see the tension in her jaw, the way her shoulders were pulled tight. "Olivia," he said quietly. She looked up, and for a second they just stared at each other. Then she stepped back, smoothing her sweater. "Brunch is in 20 minutes, she said, her voice carefully neutral. "We should go." Pierre packed the suit into a garment bag and handed it to a waiting attendant, who disappeared with it like a ghost. Ethan changed back into his jeans and flannel, feeling the weight of the estate pressing down on him again. By the time they left the fitting room, he was ready to bolt. The dining room was somehow even more intimidating than the rest of the house. A table that could seat 20 people stretched down the center of the room, set with china and crystal that probably cost more per plate than Ethan's monthly rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens, where fountains sparkled in the sunlight. And seated at the head of the table was Margaret Grant, flanked by a man who could only be Olivia's father. Richard Calloway sat across from them. Ethan recognized him immediately, though not from any personal connection. Richard was the kind of guy who looked like he'd been born wearing a suit. Mid-30s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a jawline that belonged on a cologne ad. He had the easy confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. And when he saw Olivia, his smile was warm and possessive in a way that made Ethan's jaw tighten. "Olivia," Richard said, standing, "you look beautiful, as always." "Richard," Olivia replied, her tone cool. She didn't let go of Ethan's hand. "I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow." "Your mother invited me for brunch," Richard said. His eyes flicked to Ethan, and his smile dimmed. "I see you brought a guest." "This is Ethan Cole," Olivia said. "My boyfriend." The word hung in the air like a grenade. Margaret's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Olivia's father, a tall man with graying hair and the kind of face that suggested he'd stopped caring about things a long time ago, looked up from his newspaper with mild interest. Richard's smile didn't falter, but something cold slid behind his eyes. "Boyfriend," Richard repeated. "How unexpected. I didn't realize you were seeing anyone." "It's recent," Olivia said smoothly. She pulled out a chair and sat, tugging Ethan down beside her. "Ethan, this is Richard Calloway." "Richard, Ethan." Richard extended a hand across the table. His grip was firm, just shy of painful, a test Ethan recognized immediately. He squeezed back, matching the pressure, and watched Richard's smile tighten. "Pleasure," Richard said. "Likewise," Ethan replied, though they both knew it was a lie. Margaret set her fork down with a delicate clink. "Mr. Cole, Olivia tells us very little about her personal life. How exactly did the two of you meet? Ethan glanced at Olivia, who gave him the smallest nod. They'd gone over this in the car. Keep it simple. Keep it believable. Don't overthink it. My car broke down near his garage, Olivia said before Ethan could speak. He fixed it. We got it talking. How romantic, Margaret said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. And what is it you do, Mr. Cole? I'm a mechanic, Ethan said. I run a small auto repair shop. How quaint, Margaret said. She took a sip of her mimosa, her gaze never leaving Ethan's face. And you make a living from that? I do all right, Ethan said evenly. I'm sure you do, Margaret replied. Though I imagine it's quite different from the world Olivia inhabits. Tech companies, board meetings, international travel. Do you travel much, Mr. Cole? Not really, Ethan admitted. I've got a daughter. She keeps me pretty grounded. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Margaret's expression froze. Richard's eyebrows rose. Even Olivia's father looked up from his newspaper. A daughter, Margaret repeated. Maya, Ethan said, refusing to flinch. She's 7. Margaret's gaze shifted to Olivia, sharp as a blade. You're dating a man with a child. I am, Olivia said, her voice steady. And the mother? Not in the picture, Ethan said. He felt Olivia's hand find his under the table, her fingers threading through his in a silent show of support. It's just me and Maya. Margaret's lips pursed. I see. How admirable, Richard said, though his tone suggested he found it anything but. Single fatherhood must be quite challenging. It has its moments, Ethan said. And yet you found time to pursue a relationship with Olivia, Richard continued. That's impressive, given how demanding her schedule must be. Tell me, how often do you two actually see each other? It was a trap, and Ethan saw it coming a mile away. If he said they saw each other all the time, it would be obvious he was lying. If he said they didn't, it would undermine the whole charade. Often enough, Olivia cut in. Ethan understands that my work requires flexibility, and I make time for what matters. Of course, Richard said. His smile was razor thin. I'm sure you do. Breakfast arrived in waves, poached eggs, smoked salmon, fresh fruit arranged like art on delicate plates. Ethan had no idea which fork to use and settled for watching Olivia out of the corner of his eye, mimicking her movements. The food was incredible, though he barely tasted it. Every bite felt like a performance, every word a landmine. So, Ethan, Olivia's father said, speaking for the first time. His voice was deeper than Ethan expected, rougher. What are your intentions with my daughter? Dad, Olivia said sharply. It's a fair question, her father replied. He set his newspaper aside, giving Ethan his full attention. You show up here out of nowhere dating my daughter. I think I'm entitled to know what you're after. I'm not after anything, Ethan said. I like Olivia. That's it. You like her, her father repeated. That's all? That's enough, isn't it? Ethan shot back. A flicker of something, respect maybe, crossed the older man's face. We'll see. Margaret dabbed at her mouth with a napkin. Mr. Cole, you must understand that Olivia's life is complicated. She has responsibilities, expectations. A man in your position— Mother, Olivia interrupted, her voice like ice. Ethan is my guest. I expect you to treat him with respect. I'm simply being realistic, Margaret said. Surely Mr. Cole understands that this relationship is highly unusual. Unusual doesn't mean wrong, Olivia replied. Doesn't mean right either, Richard added. He leaned back in his chair, studying Ethan like a specimen under glass. No offense, Ethan, but you have to admit this is a bit sudden. Olivia's never mentioned you before, and now here you are at a family brunch, acting like you've been together for months. It's suspicious. Suspicious, Ethan repeated. Convenient, Richard clarified, especially given the timing. What timing? Ethan asked, though he knew exactly what Richard meant. Richard's smile was all teeth. The engagement party, tomorrow night, the one where Olivia and I were supposed to announce our plans to merge our companies. Funny how she suddenly has a boyfriend just in time to derail that. Maybe she just finally found someone worth her time, Ethan said. The words came out sharper than he intended, but he didn't take them back. Richard's expression darkened, and Margaret's eyes narrowed. Olivia's hand tightened around his under the table. "Careful, Mr. Cole," Richard said softly. "You're out of your depth here." "Maybe," Ethan said, "but at least I'm honest about it." The silence that followed was suffocating. Margaret looked like she wanted to throw him out personally. Richard's jaw was tight enough to crack. Olivia's father had gone back to his newspaper, clearly done with the conversation. And Olivia was staring at Ethan like she'd never seen him before. "I think we're done here," Olivia said, standing abruptly. "Ethan and I have things to do." "Olivia," Margaret began. "We'll see you at dinner," Olivia said, already pulling Ethan toward the door. "Thanks for brunch." They didn't speak until they were halfway down the hall, out of earshot. Then Olivia stopped, turning to face him. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. "What was what?" Ethan shot back. "You can't antagonize Richard like that, or my mother. This only works if they believe we're real, and acting like you're ready to fight him doesn't help." "He was being a dick," Ethan said. "Was I supposed to just sit there and take it?" "Yes," Olivia snapped. "That's exactly what you're supposed to do. This isn't about defending my honor, Ethan. This is about playing a role. And right now, you're making it harder." Ethan felt his temper flare. "You know what? Maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe you should have found someone who's better at pretending to be someone they're not." "Maybe I should have," Olivia said, her voice cold. They stared at each other, the tension crackling between them. Ethan wanted to walk out, wanted to get in his truck and drive back to his real life, where people said what they meant and didn't play games. But then he thought about Maya, about the $50,000, about the fact that he'd already signed a contract. "Look," he said, forcing himself to calm down. "I get that this is complicated, but you can't expect me to just sit there while your family treats me like garbage. I'm doing this for you, but I'm not going to be a punching bag." Olivia's expression softened just slightly. "I know, and I'm sorry. My family is difficult. But we need to be smart about this. Richard is looking for any excuse to prove we're fake. If you give him ammunition, this whole thing falls apart." "So what do you want me to do?" Ethan asked. "Be yourself," Olivia said. "But be careful. Don't let them get under your skin. And for the love of everything, don't pick fights with Richard. Even if he deserves it." "Especially if he deserves it," Olivia said. She reached up, straightening his collar again in that same absent gesture. "Can you do that?" Ethan sighed. "I'll try." "That's all I'm asking," Olivia said. She hesitated, then added, "You were right, though. What you said to Richard, I have found someone worth my time, even if it's just for a weekend." Something in Ethan's chest twisted. "Olivia, come on," she said, already turning away. "I'll show you to your room. You'll want to rest before dinner. It's going to be worse than brunch." "Great," Ethan muttered, following her down the hall. "Can't wait." The room Olivia led him to was bigger than his living room and kitchen combined. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in linens that looked like they'd never been slept in. A fireplace sat against one wall, flanked by leather chairs. French doors opened onto a balcony that overlooked the gardens. "This is insane," Ethan said. "This is the guest wing," Olivia replied. "My room is down the hall if you need anything. Dinner is at 7, formal attire." "The suit Pierre picked out?" "Exactly," Olivia said. She lingered in the doorway like there was something else she wanted to say. Finally, she asked, "How's Maya?" The question caught Ethan off guard. "What?" "Your daughter," Olivia said. "Is she okay? With the nanny?" Ethan pulled out his phone, checking the messages Clara had sent. There were photos of Maya finger painting, building a tower out of blocks, laughing at something Clara had said. "Yeah," he said quietly. "She's good." "She's lucky to have you," Olivia said. "I'm lucky to have her," Ethan corrected. Olivia smiled, and for the first time since they'd arrived, it looked genuine. "Get some rest, Ethan. You're going to need it." She left, closing the door behind her. Ethan stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by luxury he'd never asked for, and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. Dinner was a nightmare dressed up as a formal affair. The dining room had been transformed, the long table now set for 12. Olivia's extended family had arrived, aunts and uncles and cousins who all looked at Ethan like he was an exotic animal. Richard sat directly across from him, his expression pleasant and his eyes cold. Margaret presided over the table like a queen, directing conversation with surgical precision. "So, Ethan," one of Olivia's aunts said, a woman named Diane with too much jewelry and a voice like a cheese grater. "Tell us about your family. Are your parents still living?" "My dad passed a few years ago," Ethan said. "Heart attack. My mom's not in the picture." "Oh, how tragic," Diane said, though she sounded more curious than sympathetic. "And you inherited the garage from your father?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "He started it when I was a kid. I took over after he died." "How noble," Diane said, "keeping the family business alive, though I imagine it's quite limiting, isn't it? Running a small shop in a small town, no room for growth." "It's enough," Ethan said tightly. "But is it really?" Richard interjected. "I mean, you're raising a child on a mechanic's salary. That can't be easy. What happens when she gets older? College, medical bills, all the things life throws at you. Can your shop handle that?" Ethan's grip on his fork tightened. "I manage." "I'm sure you do," Richard said smoothly. "But managing isn't the same as thriving, is it? Olivia's used to a certain standard of living. Private jets, five-star hotels, the best of everything. Can you really provide that?" "Richard," Olivia said sharply, "that's enough." "I'm just being practical," Richard replied. "Ethan seems like a nice guy, but let's be honest, this relationship doesn't make sense. You two come from completely different worlds. What happens when the novelty wears off?" "Maybe it won't," Ethan said. Richard laughed. "Come on, you're a single father with grease under your nails, and she's a CEO worth hundreds of millions. You really think this is going to last?" "Maybe it will if people stop trying to sabotage it," Ethan shot back. "Sabotage." Richard's eyebrows rose. "I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm pointing out reality. Olivia needs someone who can match her ambition, her intelligence, her drive, someone who understands the world she lives in. No offense, Ethan, but that's not you." "You don't know the first thing about me," Ethan said, his voice low. "I know enough," Richard replied. "I know you're here because Olivia's trying to make a point, and I know that when this little experiment fails, she'll come back to reality, to me." Ethan stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "You know what, Richard? You're right. I don't belong here. I don't understand your world, and I don't care to. But at least I don't treat people like business deals." "Ethan," Olivia said, standing as well. "Don't." "Why not?" Ethan demanded. "He's been taking shots at me all night, at you, acting like you don't have a choice in any of this." "I don't need you to defend me," Olivia said, her voice tight. "Yeah, well, maybe you should start defending yourself," Ethan shot back. The room went silent. Margaret's expression was pure frost. Richard looked smug. Olivia's face was pale, her hands clenched at her sides. "I think we're done here," Olivia said quietly. She looked at her mother. "Ethan and I are leaving." "Olivia," Margaret began. "We're done," Olivia repeated. She grabbed Ethan's hand and pulled him toward the door, ignoring the murmurs that followed them out. They didn't stop until they were outside, standing in the courtyard under a sky full of stars. Olivia let go of his hand and turned on him, her eyes blazing. "What the hell were you thinking?" she demanded. "I was thinking that Richard's an asshole and someone needed to say it," Ethan replied. "That's not your job," Olivia snapped. "You're here to play a role, not start a war." "I'm here because you're too scared to fight your own battles," Ethan said, and regretted it the second the words left his mouth. Olivia went very still. "What did you say?" "I didn't mean—" "No, you did," Olivia said. Her voice was shaking. "You think I'm a coward. You think I brought you here because I'm too weak to stand up to my family." "That's not what I meant," Ethan said, but it sounded weak even to his own ears. "Then what did you mean?" Olivia demanded. "Because from where I'm standing, you just accused me of hiding behind you instead of dealing with my own problems." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling over. "I don't know, Olivia. Maybe I'm just tired of watching everyone treat you like a chess piece. You're smart, you're successful, you run a damn company, and you're letting your mother and Richard dictate your life." "You don't understand," Olivia said. "Then help me understand," Ethan shot back. "Because right now, it looks like you're so busy playing their game that you've forgotten you don't have to." Olivia stared at him, her chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. Then, without warning, she laughed. It was a bitter sound, sharp-edged and hollow. "You think it's that simple?" she asked. "You think I can just walk away? My mother built Grant Industries from nothing. She sacrificed everything for that company. And now she's asking me to do the same. To put the business first, to marry someone who can help it grow, to stop being selfish and think about the bigger picture." "That's not selfish," Ethan said. That's called having a life." "Not in my world," Olivia replied. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking small despite her height. "In my world, love is a luxury. Happiness is a bonus. What matters is legacy, control, power." "And you believe that?" Olivia's laugh was quieter this time, sadder. "I don't know what I believe anymore." Ethan took a step closer, close enough to see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight she carried in the set of her shoulders. "Then maybe it's time to figure it out." "How?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "By stopping this," Ethan said. "By telling your family the truth. That you don't want to marry Richard. That you're not going to sacrifice your life for a company." "And then what?" Olivia demanded. "They cut me off? Strip me of my position? Destroy everything I've worked for?" "Maybe," Ethan admitted, "but at least it'd be your choice." Olivia shook her head. "You make it sound so easy." "It's not," Ethan said, "but nothing worth doing ever is." They stood there in the dark, the estate looming behind them like a monument to everything Olivia was trying to escape. Ethan thought about his own life, about the choices he'd made, the ones he regretted, about Charlotte leaving and how it had felt like the end of the world, until he realized it was actually the beginning of something better. "I'm sorry," he said finally, "for what I said. You're not a coward. You're just stuck." "Yeah," Olivia said softly. "I am. So get unstuck," Ethan said. "Tomorrow night, at the party. Tell them no. Tell them you're done. And if they don't listen, then at least you tried," Ethan said. "And at least you'll know you fought for yourself instead of letting them decide for you." Olivia looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. "You really believe that?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "I do." She stepped closer, closing the distance between them until they were almost touching. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For being honest," Olivia said, "even when it pisses me off." Ethan smiled despite himself. "Any time." They stood there, the night air cool against their skin, and for the first time since he'd arrived, Ethan felt like maybe, just maybe, this weekend might actually mean something. The next morning came too fast. Ethan woke to sunlight streaming through the French doors and the uncomfortable realization that he'd slept in a bed that probably cost more than his truck. For a disorienting moment, he forgot where he was. Then it all came rushing back: the estate, the dinner, the fight with Olivia in the courtyard, and the engagement party looming just hours away. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Clara with a photo of Maya eating pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. The kid was grinning, syrup on her chin, completely oblivious to the fact that her father was currently trapped in a world that felt like a bad dream. Ethan stared at the photo longer than he needed to, using it to anchor himself. This was why he was here. For her. For the chance to give her something better than hand-me-downs and maybes. He texted back a heart emoji and dragged himself out of bed. The bathroom was ridiculous. All marble and gold fixtures, with a shower that had more settings than his truck had miles on it. Ethan spent 5 minutes trying to figure out how to turn it on before giving up and just twisting everything until water came out. By the time he was dressed in the clothes Pierre had left for him, dark slacks and a crisp white button-down, he felt almost human again. Almost. There was a knock at the door. Ethan opened it to find a young woman in a staff uniform holding a silver tray with coffee and pastries. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she said with a practiced smile. "Breakfast. Miss Grant asked that I bring it to you." "Thanks," Ethan said, taking the tray. The coffee smelled incredible, rich and dark. The pastries looked like they belonged in a bakery window. He ate standing up, looking out over the gardens, trying not to think about how many people lived their whole lives like this, waking up to breakfast delivered to their rooms, never worrying about whether they could afford the good coffee. Another knock. This time it was Olivia. She looked different in the morning light, softer somehow. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she'd traded the designer clothes for jeans and a simple gray sweater. No makeup, no armor, just her. "Morning," she said. "Morning," Ethan replied. "Thanks for breakfast." "Least I could do after last night," Olivia said. She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "I wanted to apologize for snapping at you. You didn't deserve that." "I kind of did," Ethan admitted. "I was out of line." "You were honest," Olivia corrected, "and I needed to hear it, even if it sucked." They stood there for a moment, the silence comfortable in a way it hadn't been before. Then Olivia sighed and sat down on the edge of the bed. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, "about telling them no, about fighting for myself." "And?" Ethan prompted. "And I think you're right," Olivia said. "I'm tired of letting them control my life, tired of pretending this engagement is something I want. So tonight, at the party, I'm going to end it, publicly." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "Publicly?" "It's the only way they'll take me seriously," Olivia said. "If I do it in private, my mother will just steamroll me. But if I do it in front of all their business partners, all their friends, they won't be able to sweep it under the rug." "That's going to blow up in your face," Ethan said bluntly. "Probably," Olivia agreed. "But at least it'll be my choice, my explosion." Ethan sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "You sure about this?" "No," Olivia admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." "Okay," Ethan said. "Then I've got your back." Olivia looked at him, something warm and grateful in her eyes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Ethan said. "Your family's going to hate me even more after tonight." "They already hate you," Olivia pointed out. "Might as well give them a reason." Ethan laughed despite himself. "Fair enough." Olivia stood, smoothing her sweater. "The party starts at 7. Hair and makeup will be here at 5 to get me ready. Pierre will come by at 6 to make sure you're presentable." "I'm always presentable," Ethan said. "You wore a flannel to brunch," Olivia replied, but she was smiling. "I'll see you downstairs in a few hours. Try not to antagonize anyone before then." "No promises," Ethan said. She left, and Ethan was alone again with his thoughts and the creeping certainty that tonight was going to be a disaster. The hours crawled by. Ethan tried to distract himself by calling Maya, listening to her chatter about the fort she and Clara had built in the living room. He answered emails from customers, scheduled appointments for next week, did anything to keep his mind off what was coming. But eventually, 6 o'clock arrived, and with it came Pierre. "Time to make you beautiful," Pierre announced, sweeping into the room with the same garment bag from yesterday. "I thought I was already beautiful," Ethan said. "You're adequate," Pierre replied, "but adequate won't survive tonight. Now put this on before I lose my patience." The suit was even nicer than the one from brunch, midnight blue with subtle pinstripes, paired with a crisp white shirt and a silk tie the color of charcoal. The shoes were polished to a mirror shine, and when Pierre added a pocket square and cufflinks, Ethan barely recognized himself in the mirror. "There," Pierre said, stepping back to admire his work. "Now you look like you belong." "I look like someone else," Ethan muttered. "Exactly," Pierre said. "That's the point." By the time Ethan made it downstairs, the estate had been transformed. The gardens were lit with thousands of tiny lights, strung between trees and wrapped around fountain sculptures. A massive white tent had been erected on the lawn, its interior glowing like a lantern. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved through the space with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than Ethan's lunch budget for a week. And the people. There had to be 200 of them, maybe more. Men in tuxedos and women in gowns that sparkled under the lights, all of them radiating wealth and confidence. Ethan felt his stomach twist. This wasn't just a party. This was a battlefield, and he was about to walk into the middle of it. "Ethan." He turned to find Olivia standing at the bottom of the grand staircase, and for a second he forgot how to breathe. She was stunning. There was no other word for it. Her dress was emerald green, fitted at the bodice and flowing to the floor in soft waves. Her hair had been swept up into something elegant and complicated, with a few loose strands framing her face. Diamond earrings caught the light, and her makeup was flawless, highlighting the sharp lines of her cheekbones and the depth of her eyes. "Wow," Ethan said, because his brain had apparently short-circuited. Olivia's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "You clean up pretty well yourself." "Pierre threatened me," Ethan said. "I didn't have a choice." Olivia laughed, the sound bright and unexpected. Then she descended the last few steps and took his arm, her touch light but steady. "Ready?" she asked. "Not even a little bit," Ethan admitted. "Good," Olivia said. "Neither am I." They walked out to the tent together, and the moment they appeared, heads turned. Ethan could feel the weight of every gaze, hear the whispers that followed them, like a wave. Olivia held her head high, her grip on his arm firm, and Ethan matched her stride, refusing to let the scrutiny get to him. Margaret was waiting near the center of the tent, holding court with a cluster of older women in designer gowns. When she saw Olivia, her expression hardened, but she excused herself and glided over, every inch the matriarch. "Olivia," Margaret said, her tone clipped, "you look lovely, though I wish you'd consulted me on your choice of dress. Green is so bold for an occasion like this." "I like bold," Olivia replied evenly. Margaret's gaze shifted to Ethan, and her smile was pure ice. "Mr. Cole, I see Pierre managed to make you presentable." "He did his best," Ethan said. "Indeed," Margaret said. She leaned closer, lowering her voice so only they could hear. "I don't know what game you think you're playing, but it ends tonight. Richard is announcing the engagement at 9. This little charade of yours won't change that." "We'll see," Olivia said, her voice steady. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Don't test me, Olivia. You may run a company, but I built it, and I won't let you destroy everything I've worked for because of some misguided rebellion." "It's not a rebellion," Olivia said. "It's my life." "Your life is Grant Industries," Margaret snapped. "The sooner you remember that, the better." She turned and walked away, leaving Olivia and Ethan standing in the middle of the crowd. Olivia's jaw was tight, her shoulders rigid. "You okay?" Ethan asked quietly. "Fine," Olivia said, though her voice was strained. "Let's get a drink." They made their way to the bar, weaving through clusters of guests who watched them with thinly veiled curiosity. Ethan grabbed 2 glasses of champagne and handed one to Olivia, who downed half of it in one go. "Easy," Ethan said. "I need it," Olivia replied. She took another sip, then set the glass down. "Okay, let's do this." "Do what?" Ethan asked, but Olivia was already moving, pulling him toward a group of older men in expensive suits. "Gentlemen," Olivia said smoothly, "I'd like to introduce you to Ethan Cole. Ethan, this is Mr. Harrison, Mr. Leong, and Mr. Brennan. They're investors in Grant Industries." The men shook Ethan's hand with varying degrees of warmth. Mr. Harrison, a tall man with steel gray hair, studied Ethan like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "Cole," Harrison said. "What business are you in?" "Auto repair," Ethan said. Harrison's eyebrows rose. "Interesting, not the usual crowd Olivia runs with." "I'm not much for usual," Ethan said. Leong, a shorter man with sharp eyes, leaned in. "Auto repair. That's hands-on work. Honest work. I respect that. Too many people these days don't know what it's like to build something with their own 2 hands." "Thank you, sir," Ethan said, surprised. "Don't thank me yet," Leong said with a dry smile. "I'm about to ask you what your intentions are with Olivia here, and I expect a straight answer." Ethan glanced at Olivia, who gave him the smallest nod. "My intentions are to make her happy," Ethan said simply. "That's it." "That's a lot," Brennan said. He was the youngest of the 3, maybe mid-50s, with a sharp suit and sharper demeanor. "Happiness isn't exactly a commodity in our world. People like Olivia don't get to prioritize it." "Maybe they should," Ethan said. Brennan laughed. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both," Ethan admitted. Harrison clapped him on the shoulder. "I like this one, Olivia. He's got spine. Whether that's a good thing or not remains to be seen." Olivia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you, gentlemen, if you'll excuse us." She pulled Ethan away, her grip tight on his arm. They made it to the edge of the tent before she stopped, her breathing uneven. "That was intense," Ethan said. "That was nothing," Olivia replied. "Wait until Richard shows up." As if summoned by her words, Richard appeared. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine, his tuxedo perfectly tailored, his hair immaculate. He was flanked by 2 men in equally sharp suits, both of whom looked like they could break Ethan in half without breaking a sweat. "Olivia," Richard said, his smile warm but his eyes cold. "You look absolutely radiant tonight." "Richard," Olivia said, her tone neutral. Richard's gaze slid to Ethan. And Ethan? Still here, I see. Still here, Ethan confirmed. I have to admit I'm impressed, Richard said. Most men would have run by now. My future mother-in-law can be intense. She's not your future mother-in-law, Olivia said sharply. Richard's smile didn't waver. Not yet, but give it time. There's not going to be any time, Olivia said, because I'm not marrying you, Richard. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Richard's smile faded, replaced by something colder, harder. Olivia, he said slowly, I don't think you understand what you're saying. I understand perfectly, Olivia replied. I'm saying no. To the engagement, to the merger, to all of it. Richard's jaw tightened. This isn't the time or place for this conversation. Actually, it's the perfect time, Olivia said. She looked around, her voice carrying just loud enough for the people nearby to hear. Because I want everyone to know. I'm not doing this. I'm not marrying you to save a business deal. The tent had gone quiet. Ethan could feel the weight of 100 eyes turning toward them. Richard's face had gone pale, then red. You're making a mistake, Richard said, his voice low and dangerous. The mistake was letting it get this far, Olivia shot back. Richard took a step closer, and Ethan moved instinctively, putting himself between them. Step back, Ethan said quietly. Or what? Richard demanded. You'll fight me? In front of all these people? If I have to, Ethan said. Richard laughed, sharp and bitter. You really think you can protect her? You're a mechanic, Ethan, a nobody. You have no idea what you're up against. Maybe not, Ethan said, but at least I'm not trying to buy someone's life. Richard's hand shot out, grabbing Ethan by the collar. You arrogant! Richard, stop! Margaret's voice cut through the chaos like a whip. She appeared beside them, her face a mask of fury barely contained. Let him go, Margaret said, her voice trembling with rage. Now! Richard released Ethan, stepping back. The crowd had closed in around them, a silent audience to the spectacle. Mother, Olivia began. Don't, Margaret said, holding up a hand. Don't say another word. You've embarrassed this family enough for one night. I'm not trying to embarrass anyone, Olivia said. I'm trying to live my own life. Your life is Grant Industries, Margaret hissed. Everything I've done, everything I've sacrificed, it was for you. And this is how you repay me? By throwing it all away for some mechanic? This has nothing to do with Ethan, Olivia said, her voice rising. This is about you trying to control me, to turn me into a pawn in your business games. I'm done, Mother. I'm done pretending. Then you're done with Grant Industries, Margaret said coldly. Effective immediately, I'm calling an emergency board meeting. You'll be removed as CEO. The words hit like a slap. Olivia went pale, her hands clenching at her sides. You can't do that, she said. Watch me, Margaret replied. She turned to Richard. I apologize for my daughter's behavior. The engagement stands. We'll announce it as planned. Like hell you will, Ethan said. Margaret's gaze snapped to him. Excuse me? You heard me, Ethan said. He was shaking, adrenaline flooding his system, but he didn't back down. You don't get to decide Olivia's life for her. She's not a business deal. She's a person, and if you can't see that, then you don't deserve her. The silence was deafening. Margaret stared at Ethan like he'd grown a second head. Richard looked like he wanted to strangle him, and Olivia was staring at him with something that might have been awe. How dare you, Margaret said, her voice shaking. You come into my home, into my family, and you have the audacity to speak to me like that? Yeah, Ethan said, I do, because someone needs to. Margaret's hand shot up, and for a wild second, Ethan thought she might actually hit him, but then Olivia stepped forward, putting herself between them. Enough, Olivia said. Her voice was steady now, stronger. Mother, if you want to remove me as CEO, do it. But I'm not marrying Richard. I'm not sacrificing my happiness for a company, and I'm not letting you control me anymore. Then you're nothing, Margaret said, her voice cold. Without Grant Industries, you're nothing. Maybe, Olivia said, but at least I'll be free. She turned and walked away, her head held high. Ethan followed, ignoring the whispers and stares. They made it to the edge of the gardens before Olivia stopped, her breathing ragged. Are you okay? Ethan asked. Olivia laughed, wild and broken. I just blew up my entire life in front of 200 people. I'm amazing. You were incredible, Ethan said. Olivia turned to him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I can't believe I just did that. I can, Ethan said. You've been wanting to do it for years. And now I've lost everything, Olivia said. The company, my family, everything I worked for. You didn't lose everything, Ethan said. You found yourself. Olivia stared at him, and then, without warning, she kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't part of the act. It was raw and desperate and real. Ethan froze for half a second before kissing her back, his hands finding her waist as hers tangled in his hair. It was nothing like the careful, controlled touches they'd shared before. This was need and fear, and the sudden, overwhelming realization that something had shifted between them. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. I'm sorry, Olivia whispered. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize, Ethan said. His voice was rough. Not for that. They stood there in the dark, the party still raging behind them, and Ethan realized with sudden, stark clarity that this wasn't pretend anymore. Somewhere between the fake smiles and the forced affection, something real had taken root, and he had no idea what to do about it. We should go, Olivia said finally, her voice small. Where? Ethan asked. I don't know, Olivia admitted. Anywhere but here. Okay, Ethan said. Let's go. They walked back toward the house, hand in hand, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just crossed a line neither of them could uncross. Inside, the estate felt like a tomb. The staff had retreated, leaving the hallways empty and echoing. Olivia led Ethan to a sitting room he hadn't seen before, smaller, more intimate, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a fireplace that crackled softly. I used to hide in here when I was a kid, Olivia said, sinking into one of the leather chairs. Whenever my mother threw one of her parties, I'd sneak in here and read until it was over. Ethan sat across from her, studying her face. She looked exhausted, the adrenaline fading and leaving behind only the weight of what she'd done. What happens now? He asked. I don't know, Olivia said. She pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. My mother's serious about the board meeting. She'll have me removed by Monday. Can she do that? Legally, it's complicated, but she controls enough of the board that she can make it happen, Olivia said. I could fight it, but it would take months, maybe years. And in the meantime, the company would tear itself apart. So you just let her win? I let her have the company, Olivia corrected. That's different. Ethan frowned. You worked for that company. You built it into what it is. You're just going to walk away? I don't have a choice, Olivia said. If I stay, I'll spend the rest of my life fighting her, fighting Richard, fighting everyone who thinks they know what's best for me. And I'm tired, Ethan. I'm so tired. Her voice cracked on the last word, and before Ethan could think better of it, he was out of his chair and kneeling in front of her. Hey, he said softly. Look at me. Olivia met his eyes, hers swimming with tears she refused to let fall. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Ethan said, and I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but walking away, that takes more courage than staying ever would. I don't feel courageous, Olivia whispered. I feel like I just made the biggest mistake of my life. Maybe you did, Ethan said. Or maybe you just saved it. Olivia let out a shaky breath, and then, finally, the tears came. Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her as she cried, her face buried in his shoulder. He didn't say anything, didn't try to fix it. He just held her, letting her break in a way she probably never had before. When the tears finally stopped, Olivia pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Sorry, she said, her voice rough. I don't usually fall apart like that. You're allowed, Ethan said. After tonight, I think you've earned it. Olivia laughed weakly. What about you? You just stood up to my mother in front of half the East Coast elite. That had to be terrifying. It was, Ethan admitted, but it was also worth it. Why? Olivia asked. Ethan hesitated, then said, Because you're worth it. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Olivia's eyes searched his, and Ethan saw the exact moment she realized he wasn't talking about the money anymore. Ethan, she said quietly, this was supposed to be fake. I know, Ethan said, but somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling that way. Olivia closed her eyes, her expression pained. This can't happen. You have a daughter, a life. I'm about to lose everything. I can't drag you into that. You're not dragging me anywhere, Ethan said. I'm choosing to be here. Why? Olivia demanded, her voice breaking again. Why would you do that? Because I like you, Ethan said simply. Not CEO Olivia or Grant Industries Olivia. Just you. The person who hid in libraries during parties. The person who's brave enough to walk away from everything to be free. Olivia stared at him, and for a long moment neither of them moved. Then she leaned forward and kissed him again, softer this time, but no less intense. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. This is a terrible idea, she whispered. Probably, Ethan agreed. I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. Me neither, Ethan said, but we can figure it out. Olivia pulled back, studying his face. You really mean that? Yeah, Ethan said. I do. She took a shaky breath, then nodded. Okay, let's figure it out. They sat there in the firelight, the world outside forgotten. And for the first time all weekend, Ethan felt like maybe they'd actually made the right choice. They stayed in the library until the sounds of the party faded into silence, until the last car pulled away and the estate settled into the kind of quiet that felt almost oppressive. Ethan eventually convinced Olivia to get some sleep, though she protested weakly, saying she wouldn't be able to. But exhaustion won out, and she disappeared down the hallway to her room while Ethan made his way back to his. He didn't sleep. Instead, he lay on top of the covers, still in his dress shirt and pants, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The kiss, the confession, the terrifying realization that he'd somehow gotten tangled up in something far more complicated than a simple business transaction. His phone buzzed. A text from Clara with another photo of Maya, this one showing her asleep on the couch, surrounded by stuffed animals. Ethan's chest ached looking at it. What was he doing here? He'd come for the money, for Maya's future. And now he was kissing a woman whose life was imploding, making promises he wasn't sure he could keep. But when he closed his eyes, all he could see was Olivia's face in the firelight, the vulnerability she'd shown him, the way she'd looked at him like he was something more than just the hired help. Like he mattered. He was in trouble. Deep, complicated, no-way-out trouble. Morning came with a knock on the door. Ethan dragged himself out of bed, his body protesting every movement, and opened it to find one of the staff members standing there with a grim expression. Mr. Cole, Ms. Grant requests your presence in the East Study immediately. What's going on? Ethan asked, but the staff member had already turned and was walking away. Ethan threw on yesterday's clothes and followed, his stomach twisting with anxiety. The East Study turned out to be a formal office with dark wood paneling and windows that overlooked the gardens. Olivia was standing by the desk, still wearing the clothes from last night, her makeup smudged and her hair falling out of its elegant updo. She looked like she'd been awake all night. What happened? Ethan asked. Olivia turned, her face pale. Richard called an emergency press conference. It's streaming online right now. She turned her laptop around and Ethan saw Richard standing at a podium, cameras flashing. He looked composed, professional, every inch the corporate air. After careful consideration and discussion with the Grant family, I'm pleased to announce that Olivia Grant and I have decided to move forward with our engagement, Richard was saying. Recent events have been the result of stress and miscommunication, but we've worked through our differences. The merger between Grant Industries and Callaway Enterprises will proceed as planned. Ethan felt his blood go cold. He's lying. Of course he's lying, Olivia said, her voice tight. But it doesn't matter. By the time I can issue a denial, the narrative will already be set. My mother probably orchestrated the whole thing. So correct it, Ethan said. Do your own press conference. Tell everyone the truth. And say what? Olivia demanded. That I had a public meltdown at my own engagement party? That I've been lying about having a boyfriend? That my entire family is trying to force me into a marriage I don't want? It'll sound like I'm unstable. They'll spin it as me having a breakdown, and the board will use it as justification to remove me. Then fight it, Ethan said. You said you were done letting them control you. This is them controlling you. I know, Olivia said, her voice breaking. But I don't know how to fight this, Ethan. Richard has the media. My mother has the board. I have nothing. You have yourself, Ethan said, and you have the truth. The truth doesn't matter in my world, Olivia said bitterly. Power matters, money matters, perception matters. The truth is just a liability. Before Ethan could respond, there was another knock on the door. Olivia's father walked in, looking older than he had at dinner, tired in a way that went bone deep. Olivia, he said quietly, we need to talk. I don't have anything to say to you, Olivia replied. Then listen, her father said. He glanced at Ethan. Alone, if possible. No, Olivia said. Ethan stays. Her father sighed but nodded. He closed the door and leaned against it, his hands shoved in his pockets. Your mother's calling the board meeting for tomorrow morning, he said. She has the votes to remove you. I wanted you to hear it from me. And you're just going to let her do it, Olivia said flatly. I don't have a choice, her father replied. You know how she is. Once she's made up her mind. You always have a choice, Olivia interrupted. You just choose her every single time. Her father flinched. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, Olivia said. You built that company together. You have just as much right to a say as she does. But you've spent 20 years letting her make every decision while you hide behind your newspaper. That's not fair, her father said, but his voice lacked conviction. Fair? Olivia laughed, harsh and bitter. Nothing about this is fair. She's forcing me into a marriage I don't want. She's stripping me of the job I've dedicated my life to. And you're standing there telling me you don't have a choice? What do you want me to do? Her father asked, and for the first time he sounded genuinely lost. Go against your mother? Split the company in half? Destroy everything we've built? I want you to stand up for me, Olivia said, her voice cracking. Just once. I want you to tell her that I'm your daughter and my happiness matters more than a business deal. The silence that followed was heavy. Her father looked at her, something painful in his eyes, and for a moment Ethan thought he might actually say yes. Might actually choose his daughter over his wife's ambitions, but then he shook his head. I can't, he said quietly. I'm sorry, Olivia, but I can't. Olivia's face went blank, all emotion draining out of it. Then we have nothing more to talk about. Her father hesitated, opened his mouth like he wanted to say something else, then closed it. He left without another word, and the door clicked shut behind him with a finality that felt like a period at the end of a sentence. Olivia stood there, frozen, and then she grabbed a crystal paperweight from the desk and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, glass scattering across the floor. Olivia, Ethan started. Don't, she said, her voice shaking. Just don't. But Ethan crossed the room anyway, pulling her into his arms. She resisted for half a second before collapsing against him, her whole body trembling. He chose her, she whispered. I knew he would, but I don't know what I thought. I know, Ethan said, holding her tighter. They stood there for a long time, the broken glass glittering on the floor like scattered stars. When Olivia finally pulled back, her eyes were dry, but her face was raw. I need to leave, she said. I can't stay here another minute. Okay, Ethan said. Where do you want to go? Olivia looked at him, something shifting in her expression. I don't know. I don't have anywhere. Yes, you do, Ethan said. You can come home with me. The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her, but once they were out, he didn't take them back. Ethan, I can't, Olivia said. You have Maya. You have your life. I can't just show up and... You're not showing up, Ethan interrupted. I'm asking you to come. There's a difference. Why? Olivia asked. Why would you do that? Because you need somewhere to land, Ethan said. And because I want to help. If you'll let me. Olivia stared at him, and he could see her trying to decide whether to accept, whether to trust him. Okay, she said finally, but just for a few days, until I figure out what to do next. Deal, Ethan said. They packed quickly, Olivia shoving clothes into a suitcase with shaking hands while Ethan gathered the few things he'd brought. The estate felt like a mausoleum as they walked through it, every room echoing with the weight of everything Olivia was leaving behind. They didn't see Margaret or her father, didn't say goodbye to anyone. They just left. The SUV was waiting in the driveway, the same driver who'd brought them. He loaded their bags without comment, and within minutes they were pulling away from the estate, the massive house shrinking in the rear-view mirror. Olivia didn't look back. The drive home took 2 hours, but it felt longer. Olivia spent most of it staring out the window, her expression distant. Ethan wanted to say something, to fill the silence with reassurances or plans, but he didn't know what to say. So he just sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. When they finally pulled up in front of the garage, Olivia looked at the building like she was seeing it for the first time. The paint was peeling in places, the sign slightly crooked, and the apartment above it looked small and shabby compared to the mansion they'd just left. "This is it," Ethan said, suddenly self-conscious. "It's not much, but it's perfect," Olivia interrupted. She turned to him, and her smile was small but genuine. "Thank you, Ethan." "Don't thank me yet," Ethan said. "You haven't met Maya in full force." As if on cue, the apartment door flew open and Maya came barreling down the stairs, Clara following at a more sedate pace. "Dad!" Maya shrieked, launching herself at Ethan. He caught her, swinging her up into his arms. "Hey, kiddo," he said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Miss me?" "So much," Maya said. Then she noticed Olivia and went shy, burying her face in Ethan's shoulder. "Maya, this is Olivia," Ethan said. "Remember? The pretty lady from the garage?" Maya peeked out, her eyes wide. "Are you a princess?" Olivia laughed, the sound startled but warm. "No, sweetheart, I'm just a person." "You look like a princess," Maya insisted. "Well, thank you," Olivia said. She crouched down so she was eye level with Maya. "What's your name?" "Maya, so," the girl said, gaining confidence. "I'm 7, and I can draw dinosaurs." "I love dinosaurs," Olivia said seriously. "Which one is your favorite?" "Velociraptors," Maya said immediately, "because they're smart and fast." "Good choice," Olivia said. "They're my favorite too." Maya beamed, and just like that she was won over. She grabbed Olivia's hand and started tugging her toward the stairs. "Come see my room. I have a whole collection." Olivia glanced back at Ethan, who shrugged helplessly. "Go ahead, I'll get the bags." Clara handed him a folder as Maya dragged Olivia up the stairs. "Everything went smoothly. She's a wonderful child. Here's my contact information if you need me again." "Thanks, Clara," Ethan said. "I really appreciate it." "Anytime," Clara said. She glanced up the stairs where Maya's excited chatter was still audible. "She seems nice. Your girlfriend." "She's—" Ethan started, then stopped. What was Olivia? Not his girlfriend, not really, but not just a business arrangement anymore either. "Yeah, she's nice." Clara smiled knowingly but didn't push. She left, and Ethan hauled the bags upstairs, following the sound of Maya's voice. He found them in Maya's room, Olivia sitting cross-legged on the floor, while Maya showed her every single drawing she'd made over the weekend. Olivia was listening with genuine interest, asking questions and making appreciative noises in all the right places. "This one is a T-Rex eating ice cream," Maya was explaining. "And this one is a Stegosaurus at the beach." "These are incredible," Olivia said. You're really talented, Maya." "Thank you," Maya said solemnly. Then she looked at Ethan. "Dad, can Olivia stay for dinner?" Ethan glanced at Olivia, who looked uncertain. "If your dad says it's okay," she said carefully. "It's okay," Ethan said. "Olivia's going to be staying with us for a little while." Maya's eyes went wide. "Really?" "Really," Ethan confirmed. "Is that all right with you?" "Yes." Maya threw her arms around Olivia's neck, nearly knocking her over. "We can have sleepovers and watch movies, and I can show you all my toys." Olivia laughed, hugging Maya back, and when she looked up at Ethan, there were tears in her eyes. But they were good tears, he thought, the kind that came from being welcomed instead of judged. Dinner was spaghetti from a box and sauce from a jar, nothing fancy, but Maya chattered through the whole meal, and Olivia seemed to relax by degrees. Afterward, Maya insisted on showing Olivia her favorite movie, an animated film about dragons that Ethan had seen approximately 800 times. They all piled onto the couch, Maya wedged between them, and by the time the credits rolled, the little girl was fast asleep. Ethan carried her to bed, tucking her in with practiced ease. When he came back to the living room, Olivia was standing by the window, looking out at the street below. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for bringing me here, for letting me stay." "You don't have to thank me," Ethan said, joining her at the window. "I meant what I said. You're welcome here." "I don't fit here," Olivia said, "any more than you fit at the estate." "Maybe not," Ethan admitted. But maybe that's okay. Maybe fitting isn't the point. Then what is? Olivia asked. Ethan thought about it. Finding somewhere you can breathe, somewhere you don't have to pretend. Olivia looked at him, and something in her expression softened. Is that what this place is for you? Yeah, Ethan said. It's not perfect. It's not fancy, but it's mine and Maya's, and it's real. Real, Olivia repeated, like she was testing the word. I don't think I've had anything real in a long time. You do now, Ethan said. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her face, the fear she was trying to hide. I don't know what I'm doing, Ethan. I don't know how to be this person, the one without the company, without the title, without any of it. Then we'll figure it out together, Ethan said, one day at a time. You make it sound easy, Olivia said. It's not, Ethan replied. But nothing worth doing ever is. Olivia smiled, tired and fragile, but genuine. You keep saying that. Because it's true, Ethan said. She rested her head on his shoulder, and they stood there in the quiet, the city humming softly outside the window. For the first time since the engagement party, Olivia felt like she could breathe. The next morning, Ethan woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices in the kitchen. He stumbled out of his bedroom to find Olivia and Maya making pancakes, or at least attempting to. There was flour everywhere, and Maya was wearing more batter than had actually made it to the pan, but both of them were laughing. Morning, Ethan said, leaning against the doorframe. Dad, Olivia's teaching me how to flip pancakes, Maya announced. I can see that, Ethan said, eyeing the splatter pattern on the ceiling. How's it going? We've only lost 3 to the floor, Olivia said, grinning. She looked different in the morning light, wearing one of Ethan's old sweatshirts and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Younger, happier. That's actually pretty good, Ethan said. He poured himself coffee and watched them work, feeling something warm settle in his chest. This was what his apartment was supposed to feel like. Full. Alive. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unknown number. Ethan opened it and felt his blood run cold. The board meeting is at 10. Olivia's removal is proceeding. Thought you should know. Harrison. He looked up to find Olivia watching him, her smile fading. What is it? She asked. Ethan hesitated, then handed her the phone. Olivia read the message, her face going pale. It's happening, she said quietly. Yeah, Ethan said. Maya, oblivious to the tension, flipped a pancake with a triumphant shout. It landed perfectly in the pan, and she turned to them with a huge grin. Did you see that? She demanded. I saw it, baby, Ethan said, forcing a smile. Great job. Olivia, did you see? Maya asked. I saw, Olivia said, her voice strained. You're getting really good at this. But her eyes were on her phone now, refreshing her email over and over. Finally, a notification popped up. She opened it, her face going white. They did it, she said. I'm out, effective immediately. Ethan wanted to say something, wanted to fix it, but there was nothing to fix. It was done. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Olivia shook her head. Don't be. I knew it was coming. She set the phone down, her hands shaking slightly. I just didn't think it would feel this final. What happens now? Ethan asked. I don't know, Olivia admitted. I've never not known what happens next. My whole life has been planned out minute by minute, and now, she gestured helplessly, nothing. Then we make something, Ethan said. Something new. Like what? Olivia asked. I have no idea, Ethan admitted. But we'll figure it out. Maya, sensing the mood shift, abandoned the pancakes and wrapped her arms around Olivia's waist. Are you sad? Olivia looked down at her and her eyes filled with tears. A little bit, yeah. It's okay to be sad, Maya said seriously. My dad says crying helps sometimes. Olivia laughed through her tears, pulling Maya into a proper hug. Your dad's a smart man. The smartest, Maya agreed. Ethan watched them, his heart twisting. Whatever happened next, whatever mess Olivia had to sort through, at least she wouldn't have to do it alone. The rest of the day passed in a strange limbo. Olivia's phone rang constantly. Reporters, former colleagues, people she'd thought were friends calling to get her side of the story or to offer useless platitudes. She stopped answering after the 10th call, turning her phone off entirely. I can't deal with it, she said when Ethan raised an eyebrow. Not today. Fair enough, Ethan said. Instead, they spent the day doing normal things. Ethan worked in the garage while Olivia helped Maya with a puzzle. Later, they walked to the park where Maya played on the swings, and Olivia sat on a bench beside Ethan, looking dazed. This is so strange, she said. What is? Ethan asked. This. Being normal. I don't think I've been to a park in 20 years, Olivia said. She watched Maya climb the jungle gym, her expression wistful. I used to love parks when I was a kid, before my mother decided I needed to spend all my time on activities that would look good on college applications. Never too late to start, Ethan said. Olivia smiled. Maybe not. That evening, after Maya was in bed, Olivia's phone buzzed. She turned it back on to check for messages, and now she stared at the screen with a strange expression. What is it? Ethan asked. An email from someone at Grant Industries, Olivia said slowly. Someone in accounting. What do they want? Olivia read the email, her eyes widening. They found something. Irregularities in the books, money being moved around, hidden accounts, falsified reports. Whose accounts? Ethan asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew. Richard's, Olivia said, and my mother's. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. What kind of irregularities? The kind that could land them in prison, Olivia said, her voice shaking. The kind that could bring down the whole company. She looked up at Ethan, her eyes wide. They've been embezzling for years, millions of dollars. Can you prove it? Ethan asked. This person says they can, Olivia said. They've been gathering evidence for months. They're willing to testify. Why are they telling you? Ethan asked. Because they think I deserve to know, Olivia said. And because they think I'm the only one who'll do something about it. Ethan sat back, his mind racing. So what do you do? Olivia stared at the email, her expression unreadable. I could use this. Take it to the authorities, expose them, get my position back. Destroy them the way they tried to destroy me. But, Ethan prompted. But if I do that, the company goes down too, Olivia said. Grant Industries will be investigated, audited, torn apart. It could take years to recover, if it recovers at all. So you protect the company by staying quiet, Ethan said. Let your mother and Richard get away with it. I don't know, Olivia said. She set the phone down, her hands trembling. I don't know what to do. Ethan moved closer, taking her hands in his. What do you want to do? Olivia looked at him, her eyes swimming with tears. I want to make them pay. I want them to face consequences for once in their lives. But I also... She broke off, her voice cracking. That company was my life, Ethan. If it goes down, it's not just my mother and Richard who suffer. It's hundreds of employees, people who depend on those jobs to feed their families. Then maybe the question isn't what they deserve, Ethan said. Maybe it's what you can live with. Olivia stared at him, and he could see her trying to decide, trying to figure out who she wanted to be in the aftermath of everything that had happened. I need to think, she said finally. Take your time, Ethan said, but he had a feeling that whatever she decided, it was going to change everything. Olivia didn't sleep that night. Ethan heard her pacing in the living room, heard the soft sound of her typing on her laptop, the occasional frustrated sigh. He wanted to go to her, to tell her it would be okay, but he knew she needed to work through this on her own. Some decisions couldn't be made with someone holding your hand. By morning, she'd made up her mind. I'm going to the authorities, she said over breakfast. Maya was still asleep, and the apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Olivia looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed, but there was a clarity in her expression that hadn't been there before. I'm going to give them everything, the evidence, the testimony, all of it. And the company? Ethan asked. The company will survive, Olivia said. Or it won't. But either way, it won't be built on lies anymore. She took a shaky breath. My mother always said that legacy was everything, that what we built mattered more than who we were. But she was wrong. Who we are is the only thing that matters. And I'm not going to be someone who protects corruption just because it's convenient. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. I'm proud of you. Don't be, Olivia said, but she squeezed his hand back. Not yet. I haven't done anything. You decided to do the right thing, Ethan said. That's something. Olivia smiled, tired but genuine. I'm scared. I know, Ethan said, but you're doing it anyway. That's what courage is. She met his eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or trust, or something bigger that neither of them was ready to name yet. Will you come with me? Olivia asked. When I go to the prosecutor's office? Of course, Ethan said. Whenever you're ready. Today, Olivia said, before I lose my nerve. They left Maya with Mrs. Chen, who asked no questions and simply nodded when Ethan said they'd be gone for a few hours. The drive to the city felt longer than it was, tension humming between them like a live wire. Olivia clutched a folder full of documents, the evidence the accountant had sent her along with her own notes and records. The prosecutor's office was in a gray building downtown, all concrete and fluorescent lights. A woman named Jennifer Marks met them in a conference room, her expression professional but curious. Ms. Grant, she said, shaking Olivia's hand. I have to admit, when I got your call, I wasn't sure what to expect. Neither was I, Olivia said. She set the folder on the table. But I have information about financial crimes at Grant Industries. Embezzlement, fraud, falsified reports, and I have evidence to back it up. Jennifer's eyebrows rose. That's a serious allegation. I know, Olivia said. That's why I'm here. For the next 2 hours, Olivia walked Jennifer through everything. The hidden accounts, the money transfers, the false reporting to investors. She explained how Richard and her mother had been siphoning funds for years, covering their tracks with accounting tricks and intimidation. Jennifer took notes, asked questions, and by the end of it, her expression had shifted from curious to grim. This is substantial, Jennifer said. If even half of this checks out, we're looking at multiple felonies. Wire fraud, securities fraud, embezzlement. Your mother and Mr. Calloway could face serious prison time. Olivia's face went pale, but she nodded. I understand. I have to ask, Jennifer said carefully. Why are you coming forward with this now? You were removed from your position as CEO. Some might see this as revenge. Maybe it is, Olivia admitted, but that doesn't make it less true. They broke the law. They hurt people. And I'm tired of pretending it didn't happen. Jennifer studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right. We'll need to verify everything, conduct our own investigation. It could take weeks, maybe months. And once we move forward, there's no going back. Your family will know it came from you. I know, Olivia said quietly. Are you prepared for that? Jennifer asked. Olivia looked at Ethan, and he gave her the smallest nod of encouragement. She turned back to Jennifer. Yes, Olivia said. I'm prepared. They left the prosecutor's office in silence, the weight of what Olivia had just done settling over both of them. It wasn't until they were back in the truck, parked on a quiet side street, that Olivia finally broke down. I just turned in my own mother, she said, her voice shaking. I just destroyed my family. You told the truth, Ethan corrected. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? Olivia demanded. She pressed her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking. She's going to hate me. My father's going to hate me. Everyone's going to think I did this out of spite. Maybe some people will, Ethan said, but the people who matter will understand. And who are those people? Olivia asked, her voice muffled. I don't have anyone left. You have me, Ethan said, and Maya, and yourself. That's more than nothing. Olivia lowered her hands, her eyes red. Why are you doing this? Why are you still here? Because I want to be, Ethan said simply. Because somewhere between the fake engagement and the real disaster, I started to care about you. And not CEO you or Grant Industries you, just you. I'm a mess, Olivia said. So am I, Ethan replied. But we can be a mess together. Olivia laughed, watery and broken. That's the worst line I've ever heard. Probably, Ethan admitted, but it's true. She leaned across the center console and kissed him, soft and desperate and real. When they pulled apart, she was still crying, but she was smiling too. Okay, she whispered. Together. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks, federal agents raided Grant Industries, seizing computers and files. Within a month, Richard and Margaret were both arrested. The news coverage was relentless. Cameras camped outside the estate, reporters shouting questions that no one answered. Olivia watched it all from the safety of Ethan's apartment, her face pale but resolute. I did the right thing, she kept saying, like she was trying to convince herself. I did the right thing. You did, Ethan assured her every time. The fallout was brutal. Grant Industries' stock plummeted. The board scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal, installing an interim CEO and promising full cooperation with the investigation. Olivia's name was everywhere, some outlets painting her as a hero who'd exposed corruption, others suggesting she was a vindictive daughter seeking revenge. Olivia stopped reading the news after the first week. It doesn't matter what they think, she told Ethan one night. They were sitting on the couch, Maya asleep between them, a half-watched movie playing on the TV. I know what I did and why I did it. That's enough. Is it? Ethan asked gently. Olivia was quiet for a long moment. It has to be. But things got worse before they got better. Olivia's father called exactly once, his voice cold and distant. I hope you're satisfied, he said. You've destroyed everything. I exposed the truth, Olivia replied, her hand shaking as she held the phone. That's not the same thing. Your mother is in jail, her father said. Richard is facing 20 years. The company is in shambles. And for what? To prove a point? To do what's right, Olivia said, her voice breaking. Right, her father repeated bitterly. You always did think you knew better than everyone else. He hung up before she could respond. Olivia stared at the phone, tears streaming down her face, and Ethan pulled her into his arms without a word. I lost him, she whispered. I lost both of them. They lost you, Ethan corrected. There's a difference. It took time, but slowly, Olivia started to rebuild. She found a lawyer who helped her navigate the legal maze, protecting her from being dragged into the criminal case while ensuring she wasn't held liable for her mother's and Richard's crimes. She gave interviews to a few trusted journalists, telling her side of the story in her own words. And she started to figure out who she was without the company, without the title, without any of it. It wasn't easy. There were days when she barely got out of bed, when the weight of everything she'd lost felt too heavy to bear. But Maya helped. The little girl had taken to Olivia completely, dragging her to the park, insisting she help with homework, treating her like she'd always been part of their lives. And Ethan helped too, just by being there, by making her coffee in the morning and listening when she needed to talk and holding her when words weren't enough. 3 months after the arrests, Olivia got a call from Harrison, the investor who'd sent her the text about the board meeting. I thought you should know, he said. The board voted to offer you your position back. CEO of Grant Industries. Clean slate, full authority. Olivia's heart stopped. What? The interim CEO is a disaster, Harrison said bluntly. The company's bleeding money. We need someone who knows what they're doing, and despite everything, that's you. I can't, Olivia said automatically. Why not? Harrison asked. You earned this. You exposed the corruption. You saved the company from imploding completely. This is your chance to rebuild it the right way. Olivia looked around the apartment, at the secondhand furniture and the toys scattered on the floor, at Maya's drawings taped to the refrigerator, at Ethan, who was watching her with quiet understanding. I appreciate the offer, Olivia said slowly, but I'm going to pass. You're turning it down? Harrison sounded shocked. I am, Olivia said, and as she said it, she felt something in her chest loosen. Relief, maybe, or freedom. I spent my whole life fighting for that company, fighting to prove myself, to live up to my mother's expectations, to be worthy of a legacy I never asked for, and I'm done. I'm done fighting for something that was never really mine. What will you do? Harrison asked. Olivia looked at Ethan again and he smiled. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I'll figure it out. She hung up and sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. She'd just walked away from everything she'd worked for, everything she'd thought defined her, and instead of feeling lost, she felt light. You okay? Ethan asked. Yeah, Olivia said, and she meant it. I think I am. Life settled into a new normal after that. Olivia got a job at a small nonprofit that helped women start their own businesses, using her skills to mentor entrepreneurs who reminded her of what her mother had been before power consumed her. The pay was a fraction of what she'd made as CEO, but it was honest work, and it mattered. She moved into an apartment a few blocks from Ethan's place, something small and affordable that she decorated with furniture from thrift stores and art from local markets. Maya helped her pick out curtains, insisting on purple because it was her favorite color. Ethan helped her assemble a bookshelf that took 3 hours and a lot of cursing, but eventually stood mostly straight. They didn't rush into anything. Olivia needed time to figure out who she was outside of her family and the company. Ethan needed to make sure Maya was comfortable with the changes. But slowly, naturally, they fell into each other's lives. Dinners together turned into weekends together. Weekends turned into Olivia spending more nights at Ethan's apartment than her own. And eventually, 6 months after the engagement party that had started it all, Olivia moved in officially. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked the night before the movers came. They were lying in bed, Maya asleep in the next room, the city quiet outside the window. "I'm sure," Olivia said. She turned to face him, her hand finding his in the dark. "This is the first real choice I've ever made, and I choose this. You, Maya, this life." "It's not glamorous," Ethan warned. "It's not private jets and 5-star hotels." "I don't want glamorous," Olivia said. "I want real. I want messy and complicated and beautiful. I want this." Ethan kissed her, slow and deep, and when they pulled apart, he was smiling. "Then welcome home." The trial happened 8 months after the arrests. Margaret and Richard both pleaded guilty in exchange for reduced sentences. Margaret got 12 years, Richard got 15. Olivia didn't attend the sentencing. She'd said everything she needed to say in her deposition, and she didn't need to see her mother led away in handcuffs to know it was over. But her father showed up at her apartment a week after the sentencing, looking older and smaller than she remembered. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said when she opened the door. "But I needed to see you, to say I'm sorry." Olivia stared at him, 1,000 responses fighting for space in her throat. Anger, hurt, the desperate childish hope that maybe, finally, he'd choose her. "Why now?" she asked finally. "Because I've had 8 months to think about what I did," her father said. "About the choices I made, and I was wrong, Olivia. I was wrong to let your mother control everything. Wrong to stand by while she tried to force you into that marriage. Wrong to choose the company over you." "Yeah," Olivia said quietly. "You were." Her father flinched but nodded. "I know I can't fix it, but I want to try, if you'll let me." Olivia looked past him to where Ethan was standing in the doorway with Maya, giving her the space to decide. Maya waved at her, and Ethan gave her an encouraging nod. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Olivia said honestly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." "I understand," her father said. "But I'm willing to try," Olivia continued. "If you're willing to actually show up this time, to be my father instead of my mother's husband." Her father's eyes filled with tears. "I'd like that." It wasn't a happy ending, Olivia thought later. It was just a beginning, fragile and uncertain, but real. A year after everything fell apart, Ethan and Olivia got married. It was nothing like the engagement party that had started it all. No massive estate, no designer gowns, no business partners masquerading as guests. Just a small ceremony in the park where they'd taken Maya that first week. With Mrs. Chen and Clara and a handful of friends Olivia had made through her work at the nonprofit. Maya was the flower girl, of course, and she took her job very seriously, scattering petals with the intensity of a general commanding troops. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, she raised her hand and announced that she thought this was a great idea and everyone should be quiet so they could finish. The assembled guests laughed, and Ethan had to bite back a smile. Olivia wore a simple white dress she'd found at a boutique downtown. Nothing fancy, just something that made her feel beautiful. Ethan wore the suit Pierre had made for him because it seemed fitting somehow. Full circle. When they exchanged vows, Olivia's voice shook, but her words were clear. "I spent my whole life chasing a version of success that was never mine," she said. "Trying to be who everyone else needed me to be. And then I met you, and you saw me. Not the CEO, not the Grant Industries heiress, just me. You gave me permission to choose myself, to build a life that's real instead of perfect. And I choose you, Ethan. Every day, I choose you." Ethan's throat was tight when it was his turn. "I'm not good with words," he said, which made Olivia laugh through her tears. "But I know this. You walked into my garage a year ago and changed everything. You showed me that taking risks is worth it, that letting someone in doesn't make you weak, that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better. You make me better, Olivia, you and Maya both. and I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how much that matters. When they kissed, Maya cheered so loudly that everyone laughed, and Ethan picked her up, pulling her into the hug so it was all three of them, together. The reception was at the garage, which they'd cleaned up and decorated with string lights and borrowed tables. There was no catering, just potluck dishes from everyone who came, and the music came from someone's phone hooked up to a speaker. It was chaotic and imperfect and exactly right. Later, when the guests had gone home and Maya was asleep on the couch, Ethan and Olivia sat on the hood of his truck, looking up at the stars. "Do you regret it?" Ethan asked. "Walking away from everything?" Olivia thought about it. About the company she'd given up, the money, the power, the life she'd once thought defined her. And then she thought about the life she had now. The job that felt meaningful, the apartment that was hers, the man beside her who loved her not for what she could do for him, but for who she was. "No," she said simply. "I don't regret it at all." "Even though it's harder?" Ethan pressed. "Even though you went from running a company to struggling to pay rent sometimes?" "Especially because of that," Olivia said. She turned to him, her hand finding his. "I was drowning in that life, Ethan. I just didn't know it because I'd never known anything else. You taught me what it feels like to breathe, to choose, to live instead of just survive." "You taught me some things too," Ethan said, "like how to fight for what I want, how to trust someone enough to let them in, how to believe that I deserve something good." "We taught each other," Olivia said softly. "Yeah," Ethan agreed, we did." They sat there in the quiet, the city humming around them, and Olivia thought about the girl she'd been a year ago, the one who'd walked into a garage with a briefcase full of cash and a desperate plan. That girl had been terrified and trapped, convinced that the only way out was through control and manipulation. But control hadn't saved her. Letting go had. Choosing courage over comfort, truth over convenience, love over legacy, those were the things that had set her free. And maybe that was the lesson she'd needed to learn all along. That real power didn't come from controlling everything around you. It came from having the strength to let go of what was killing you and reach for something better, even when you couldn't see where you'd land. She'd landed here, in a life that was smaller and simpler and infinitely more real than anything she'd had before. In a love that wasn't perfect but was honest. In a family that wasn't bound by blood or obligation but by choice. And that, Olivia thought, was worth more than any empire. "Come on," Ethan said, sliding off the hood and extending his hand. "Let's go inside. We've got an early morning tomorrow." "What's tomorrow?" Olivia asked, taking his hand. "Maya's field trip," Ethan said, grinning. "The one to the science museum. You said you'd come, remember?" Olivia laughed. "I remember." They walked inside together, hand in hand, and closed the door on the night. Tomorrow there would be science museums and Maya's endless questions and the ordinary challenges of building a life together. But tonight they had this, each other. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.